In the heart of a bustling city, where sirens wail like forgotten promises and heroes often go unnoticed, Jack Thompson's day started like any other, filled with quiet desperation. But what if I told you that by sunset, a single act of bravery would flip his world upside down? Picture this: a man pulls a stranger from the jaws of a raging inferno, only to discover hours later that she's the one holding the keys to his entire future. Unbelievable, right? You won't believe how it all ties together. If stories like this grip your soul and leave you inspired, smash that like button right now and subscribe to the channel for more heart-pounding tales that prove life is stranger than fiction. Now, let's dive in. Jack Thompson was no stranger to fire. As a former Marine, he'd seen flames devour villages in distant lands, the kind that scarred not just the earth but the men who fought them. At 35, back in civilian life for 5 years, those memories still haunted him. PTSD they called it, but to Jack, it was a ghost that whispered doubts into every corner of his mind. He'd lost his job at the warehouse 6 months ago, too many days calling in sick when the nightmares gripped him like a vice. His wife, Sarah, had stuck by him through the deployments, but the strain was showing. Their small apartment in downtown Chicago felt smaller every day, bills piling up like unanswered prayers. Today, though, was supposed to be different. Jack had an interview at Apex Innovations, a tech firm offering a logistics position that paid enough to turn things around. "This could be our fresh start," Sarah had said that morning, kissing him goodbye with hope in her eyes. Dressed in his only suit, a faded navy blue that hung a bit loose from the weight he'd lost, Jack stepped out into the crisp autumn air. The interview was at 2 p.m., giving him plenty of time to walk the 10 blocks and rehearse his answers. He clutched a folder with his resume, military discharge papers, and a letter from his therapist vouching for his progress. "You're ready, Jack," he muttered to himself, dodging pedestrians on the crowded sidewalk. But as he turned the corner onto Elm Street, the world erupted in chaos. Black smoke billowed from a mid-rise apartment building, flames licking the windows like hungry tongues. Screams pierced the air, and a crowd gathered, phones out, recording but not acting. Fire trucks were en route, their distant wails growing louder, but time was a luxury no one inside had. Jack froze for a split second, his heart pounding like artillery fire. The acrid smell triggered flashes, sand, heat, the crackle of burning huts. But then he heard it, a woman's cry from the 3rd floor, her face pressed against a shattered window, coughing violently. "Help! Please!" Without thinking, Jack dropped his folder and sprinted toward the building. Bystanders shouted warnings, but he pushed through the unlocked lobby door, the heat slamming into him like a wall. Smoke filled the stairwell, stinging his eyes, but he covered his mouth with his sleeve and climbed. "Where are you?" he yelled between coughs. "Up here. Apartment 3B. Her voice was faint, choked by the fumes. Jack burst onto the 3rd floor, flames already creeping along the hallway carpet. He kicked open the door to 3B, and there she was, Eleanor Hayes, though he didn't know her name yet. She was in her late 40s, elegant even in panic, with silver-streaked hair matted to her forehead. She was trapped under a fallen beam from the collapsing ceiling, her leg pinned, the fire inching closer. "I can't move," she gasped, tears streaming down her face. Jack's military training kicked in. He assessed the room, flames blocking the window exit, but the beam wasn't too heavy. "Hold on," he said, his voice steady despite the terror clawing at him. He grabbed a nearby towel, soaked it in the sink, and wrapped it around her face. Then, with a grunt, he lifted the beam just enough for her to wriggle free. Pain shot through his shoulder, an old injury flaring up, but he ignored it. Scooping her up in a fireman's carry, he navigated back to the stairs, the building groaning like it might collapse any second. Halfway down, a section of the ceiling caved in behind them, showering sparks. Jack stumbled but kept going, bursting out into the fresh air just as firefighters arrived. Paramedics swarmed them. Eleanor coughed violently as they checked her over, but she was alive, her leg bruised but not broken. Jack waved off help for his singed hands and smoke inhalation, insisting he was fine. "Just get her taken care of," he told the EMTs. As they loaded her into an ambulance, she grabbed his hand. "Thank you," she whispered, her eyes locking onto his. "You're a hero." Jack managed a weak smile, but inside, the adrenaline crash hit hard. His suit was ruined, reeking of smoke, and his folder? Lost in the chaos. Glancing at his watch, he realized he had 20 minutes until his interview. No time to go home and change. "Great," he muttered, hailing a cab with shaking hands. Apex Innovation's office was a sleek glass tower a few blocks away. Jack arrived disheveled, his hair tousled, suit charred at the edges. The receptionist raised an eyebrow but led him to the waiting area. "Mr. Thompson? Ms. Hayes will be with you shortly." Jack's stomach dropped. Hayes? Coincidence, right? But when the door opened, there she was, Eleanor Hayes, bandaged leg propped up, still in her smoke-stained blouse but composed as ever. She was the HR director, the one deciding hires for the logistics role. Her eyes widened in recognition. "You," she breathed, motioning him inside. The interview room felt surreal. Jack sat across from her, explaining his tardiness and appearance. I was the one who pulled you from that fire," he said awkwardly. Eleanor's face softened, a mix of shock and gratitude. "I thought I recognized you. My apartment building, it's gone now. If not for you." She trailed off, composing herself. But the interview pressed on. Jack shared his military background, the deployments that built his skills in high-pressure logistics, but also the PTSD that had derailed him. "I've been in therapy," he admitted, vulnerability cracking his voice. "I want this job to prove I can move forward, for my family." Eleanor listened intently, her own story bubbling up. She revealed she'd been home that day because of a personal crisis. Her husband had passed away a year ago from cancer, leaving her buried in grief and medical debt. The apartment was all she had left, a place filled with memories. "I was sorting through his things when the fire started," she said, tears welling. "Electrical fault, they say." "I froze, Jack. For the first time in my life, I didn't know how to fight." Their conversation shifted from formal questions to shared pain, Jack's battles overseas mirroring her quiet war at home. Both had lost pieces of themselves, yet here they were, connected by fate's cruel twist. But challenges loomed. As HR director, Eleanor had to be impartial. Jack's resume was strong, but his gaps in employment raised flags. Other candidates were polished, without the baggage. And Jack? His hands trembled recounting the fire, flashbacks threatening to overwhelm him. "What if I'm not reliable?" he confessed. Eleanor paused, weighing her decision. Gratitude couldn't sway her professionally, or could it? She challenged him, "Tell me why you ran into that building today, despite everything you've been through." Jack thought of Sarah, of the life they dreamed of. "Because sometimes, you have to face the fire to save what's worth saving," he said. "Not just for others, but for yourself." It was raw, honest. Eleanor nodded, seeing the resilience beneath the scars. By the end of the hour, she'd made her choice. "Jack, you're hired," she said, extending her hand. "Not because you saved me, though I'll never forget that, but because you've shown the kind of character this company needs. Someone who doesn't back down." Jack's eyes misted over. It wasn't just a job, it was redemption. Word spread quickly. Local news dubbed him the interview hero, and Apex's CEO praised the hire as a symbol of second chances. Jack started the next week, excelling in logistics, his PTSD managed better with company support. Eleanor and he became unlikely friends, sharing coffee breaks where they traded stories of survival. She rebuilt her life too, finding purpose in mentoring others through grief groups. And so, In a world that often feels random and harsh, Jack's story reminds us that heroism isn't always planned, it's the quiet choice to act when it matters most. It shows how one moment of courage can rewrite destinies, binding strangers in ways we can't foresee. If this tale moved you, remember, life's twists are what make it beautiful. Hit like if you believe in second chances, subscribe for more stories that uplift and inspire, and share your own hero moments in the comments. Who knows? Your story might be next.